Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Wow. Happy 4th of July. Isn't this just a tremendous venue? I mean, just like, thank you, Josh. What an honor it is to have you all here tonight. But before I get into my remarks, one very quick task. I acknowledge and deeply appreciate the presence and support of my wife, Nancy. Also, the presence of my mother, Ramona, son John, and sister Tammy. Now they know, they all know from past experience that if I linger on them from very long, I will get Latino emotional. And the very last thing you need to do is to see me go all John Boehner in front of you. Nancy and I are thrilled to have her honor, Lieutenant, I said that right this time, Governor Elizabeth Dowdeswell here this evening. We've benefited, ma'am, from your wisdom and your guidance over these last 3 years, and look forward to maintaining what has become a real friendship. We are very happy to have join us His Honor Douglas Ford, the new Premier of Ontario. I had a very productive relationship with your predecessor, Your Honor, and although sadly we won't be able to work together, I know that my colleagues at the consulate, as well as my successor, will want to maintain the close ties between our consulate and Queen's Park. And I know that the mayor's on his way, so I was going to say, talk about your worship, and I just love that honorific. It's so British. I got my British consul here too. And John and I enjoyed ribbing each other on hockey, and last year split on our toonie per Sabres Leaf game wager, 2-2. And I was going to say, John, that I think we should let that bet ride for years to come. So when he gets here, please tell him that. Now, since I came to Toronto 3 years ago as Consul General, I had my eye on the R.O.M. You know, it's got this beautiful, elegant architecture and a reputation as a party spot. So I knew it would be an ideal location to celebrate America's birthday with our friends and colleagues. My mom and I had an afternoon here just 2 years ago. We spent 4 hours here walking around. It was the whale exhibit at the time, and I even got a whiff of the whale. It was as horrific as advertised. That said, I want to thank the R.O.M. and its staff for making this possible. And isn't Barbara Lika great? Woo! I have been listening to this Juno-nominated Canadian artist and her bandmates for 3 years now, and I'm thrilled to have her playing here this evening. As Jeannie said, this is my last Independence Day celebration as Consul General in Toronto and as a U.S. diplomat. We depart Toronto later this month and on my way to retirement. And I want to express my appreciation for all that this city and this country have meant to my wife Nancy and me. Toronto is surely one of the great cities of North America and of the world. Yeah. You know, we love to think of that soaring skyline. I come from Buffalo, so we're often coming back visiting my mom up the QEW, and there it all is. Just magnificent, and the CN Tower, and then Nancy and I like to walk around town in the evenings. There's a dynamism, there's an energy, there's just something to Toronto that makes you want to come back, and you can be sure that Nancy and I will be. You got the green island, the green spaces like Toronto Island, and you got these very hip neighborhoods. My son and my daughter like to come visit here. They go to Kensington Market, they go off to the Distillery District. You got Little Italy. I mean, everything. It's just a fantastic place to be. And of course, I mentioned your great Italian restaurants. There's other restaurants too, but Nancy and I particularly like the Italians. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about what my team and I have accomplished over the past 3 years in building upon the already remarkable relationship the United States enjoys with Canada, and specifically Ontario and Toronto. But first, there is the matter of former Prime Minister Trudeau's elephant next door. It's a reminder that the U.S.-Canada relationship has always weathered challenges. I just finished a couple of weeks ago Conrad Black's imposing 1,000-plus page tome, gift of my son, The History of Canada. And he discusses the sometimes rocky engagements and words passed between former President Nixon and the first Prime Minister Trudeau. Or JFK's with Prime Minister Diefenbaker. Or I guess JFK used to say Diefenbacher, and that kind of annoyed me. Or in the apocryphal story that we all know about LBJ with Prime Minister Pearson down in, and I won't repeat that here, it makes company. But all these disagreements passed into history, and the relationship endured and thrived, and it will continue to do so. Of that, I am certain. Why? Because we as Americans are grateful to Canada for many things. If you peruse the internet, you will find messages from everyday Americans thanking Canada for Neil Young, Gordon Lightfoot, peanut butter, Leonard Cohen. I just love Leonard Cohen. Yeah. You know, and there's this sort of strange juxtaposition because you know his lyrics are so dark and the music, and then you've got this Canada, which is also light and airy and fun. But he comes from there's a deeper part of you guys that you know people don't understand. 200 years of a peaceful border, insulin, basketball. That one might be a little debatable. IMAX and Montreal bagels. And sometimes you know more about American history than many of us. And of course, Canada's stunning natural beauty. Nancy and I had the chance to visit much of Ontario, Algonquin Park. We've got friends who've invited us to their cottages up in Muskoka County. Those are cottages, all right. And Nancy actually went out to Newfoundland and Nova Scotia for a couple weeks and visited those magnificent provinces as well. You are so fortunate in for the natural beauty in your national parks. But getting back to the relationship between Ontario and the United States, we have deep roots in common values that we cherish and defend. Our economic ties are rich and integrated. I saw that in my travels across Ontario, racking up more than 15,000 kilometers in my 3 years, which is about a tenth of what the Lieutenant Governor does every month. But it's, I saw much of it by car, and I took my staff with me to many of these places. I enjoyed Thunder Bay, getting in a 16-mile hike at Sleeping Giant Provincial Park, and the next morning putting all those calories back while enjoying finished pancakes at Hoyos. In the Sioux, I marveled at the technology of the locks, the product of our centuries-long shared commitment to commerce and trade. And where else but besides our border are you going to find two cities sporting the same name, a reality that underscores that we are, in fact, sisters and brothers, sharing weddings, funerals, and every life experience in between. And just outside Peterborough, I was privileged to work with Chief Phyllis Williams and her Curve Lake First Nation on addressing water issues, an effort I hope to continue even after I leave the Foreign Service. And there are many other towns and cities in between. Well, I met a whole gaggle of your worships. MPPs, members of chambers of commerce, toured businesses, met with academics and NGOs, students, visited many reserves. And I got to know Ontarians better. It was very clear that the mutual respect and shared values cherished by our two neighbors was intact, no matter the rhetoric of the past 18 months. Do we have our differences? Yeah, of course. And they're almost exclusively about trade and commerce, which should be no surprise for two trading nations, each with its own fiercely competitive national interest. But these will be resolved, as they have in the past. Of that, I am certain. Beyond what I learned in seeing Ontario, I also want to mention some of our shared accomplishments during my 3 years in Toronto, always in partnership with our Canadian friends. In my time here, our consulate issued nearly 200,000 visas, allowing new Canadians and residents of Canada to visit the U.S. for tourism, employment, education, and to invest in business that stimulates our economy and creates jobs in the United States. And we serve those travelers with efficiency and courtesy. I think I'm so very proud of my team here. A hand for my consulate team. We established new trade and investment relations that benefit economies on both sides of our border. Our commercial team organized dozens of trade and investment events and supported hundreds of companies that have generated billions, that's with a B, of dollars of business and supported thousands of US and Canadian jobs. I had the pleasure of visiting with nearly every major innovation hub and accelerator center across Ontario. I mentioned Peterborough, but obviously Kitchener, Waterloo, Kingston, up in North Bay, Sudbury. All these small towns had their little accelerator centers or larger accelerator centers. Reflects very well on Canadians' innovation and ingenuity. And then we also continue to work on other issues here a little closer to town, including the BRIC Innovation Corridor in the Hamilton, Niagara, Buffalo region. Educational partnerships between the United States and Ontario universities are growing day by day. Last month, the Department of State, with the support of Santander Bank and my consulate, awarded a grant to Wilfrid Laurier University to develop a new exchange program for Indigenous students with Syracuse University. Nancy and I particularly enjoyed the Council's partnership with Toronto's venerable cultural institutions and festivals. Whether it's TIFF or Hot Docs, I think we've got representatives from both here tonight. You've invited us back. We'll be back. It's just fantastic. The Contact Photography Festival or the Dale Chihuly exhibit here at the R.O.M. It's been a pleasure to share with you America's creativity. I'm also proud of our law enforcement cooperation. Every day our FBI, our Homeland Security officers, and our consulate security team work hand in glove with their counterparts in Ontario to keep us safe and to protect the most vulnerable, including victims of human trafficking and child exploitation. We owe them our gratitude. Given the importance of the travel and music sectors, we are grateful to Brand USA for their production of the America's Musical Journey film, as you can see being played in the back here on the wall, which traces the roots of American music and explores great musical cities such as New Orleans, Chicago, Nashville, Miami, New York, and more. And we've all the tables that are around here celebrate the cuisine of those foods as well. Lastly, and most cherished by me personally, I leave here proudly wearing the label of Water Nerd. This was bestowed on me by my colleagues. We are working together to identify potential cross-border solutions to some of the most vexing environmental challenges facing our Great Lakes, including harmful algal blooms and chloride contaminations. We will find answers, of that I am certain. I could go on, but we are here for a party after all. So to our partners and colleagues in the room, to my team at the U.S. Consulate, and to all my American and Canadian friends, thank you. Let's continue to make the future better for our two amazing countries. And in conclusion, a final point. Nancy and I were on our way back from Milwaukee last week. That's the Great Lakes city that we will soon be calling home. And we're looking and paging through our diplomatic passports, which we'll soon surrender after a terrific 32-year run. And Nancy found a quote on one of the passport pages said by Herbert Lehman, former governor and senator from New York State. Quote, "It is immigrants who brought to this land their skills of their hands and brains to make it a beacon of opportunity and hope for all men," and of course women. That quote resonated with me as a son of immigrant parents. It is indeed that diversity of thought, experience, and culture that makes America great. Of that, I am certain. That theme of immigration colors my last words, ones that reflect what I think to be the quintessential truth of our relationship. They come from my good friend Nigel Holcroft. I love that name, it's so British, Nigel Holcroft. Himself an immigrant to Canada from Great Britain. Nigel knows me from my youth. We are roommates in high school at Niagara Falls, Ontario. Nigel and his wife live in Port Stanley, a small town on Lake Erie. 2 years ago, coincidentally on the 4th of July weekend, we visited with them. When we pulled up to their house, Nigel was flying the U.S. flag as a sign of respect and friendship. And later that evening, as we were sitting enjoying a couple of beers, another shared trait between Americans and Canadians, Nigel mentioned his English roots and that much is made of the U.S.-Britain special relationship. But he said all Canadians know that the United States' real best friend is Canada. And I will tell you that despite all we have heard in the past few weeks and months, Americans know Canada is our best friend. Of that, I am certain. So may God bless Canada, may God bless the United States of America. I love you, babe. Thanks for those